This is the Hemophilia Council of California's webinar, Virtually Making Your Voice Heard, and I am Lynne Kinst, the Executive Director of the Hemophilia Council of California. And we want to thank you so much for joining us today. This is the first time which we have had to do our advocacy days as a virtual event. And this is new to all of us, but it's more important than ever that we work on making our voices heard and work to fight for access to treatment and access to insurance and important things to be able to continue to treat bleeding disorders and other rare and chronic conditions in the state of California. So we thank you guys for joining us today. I am just going to briefly mention, why are we doing virtual advocacy this year? Well, the obvious reason is COVID-19. So, due to the COVID-19 crisis, many of our events and activities have been canceled and have had to go virtual. And advocacy days is just like the rest. It's not possible for us to be in the Capitol visiting with our legislators face-to-face right now, but there are lots of things going on in the state. We are having a budget crisis. We're experiencing record unemployment that is impacting people's access to insurance. And access to treatment is still critical for every person with a bleeding disorder in the midst of all of that. So therefore, we truly believed that it was important that we not cancel our advocacy days, but that we take them virtual. And we also believe that there are lessons that we can learn this year in having to go virtual with our advocacy that will carry over into future years when we will be able to return to advocacy in the Capitol and with legislators in their offices, be that in the Capitol or their districts. But California is a large state. Not all of you can make it to a Capitol office every year to meet with your legislator, but there are other ways that we can be advocates using social media, meeting legislators in their districts. And so there's lots that we can learn and become more efficient and stronger by taking our advocacy, at least in part, virtual this year. So with that, I'm going to ask Terry, our legislative advocate, if she will introduce our guest speaker, Kimberly Chen.
Great. So I am Terry Cowger-Hill, the longstanding lobbyist to the Hemophilia Council of California. As you know, I've been the advocate for the last 26 years, and I also represent other nonprofits in the healthcare space. I'm delighted today to introduce to all of you Kimberly Chen. She is a former Assembly Fellow, and we've talked a lot to our future leaders about the Assembly and Senate Fellowship Program and how important that is, and it's a great opportunity for them. Kimberly has her Bachelor of Arts degree in Ethnic Studies and Women's Studies from Cal Berkeley. She also has a master's degree in Public Policy from USC. She worked, as I mentioned, as a fellow in the Capitol and also for the Assembly for a couple of years. And then she went on the outside and did advocacy work similar to what I do. She represented the California Pan-Ethnic Health Network. She started there as a policy associate and then went on to become their state policy director. And so we're just delighted to have her back in the Capitol as principal consultant to Dr. Pan's Senate Health Committee. Many of you know Dr. Pan as a longstanding champion for the Hemophilia Council. He's carrying the resolution to declare March Bleeding Disorders Awareness Month in California the last few years for us, and he's a former recipient of one of our advocacy awards. So with that, I want to turn it over to Kimberly to talk to you about how to tell your story and what legislators and staffers want to hear from all of you. So welcome, Kimberly.
Hey, thank you so much, Terry and Lynn and the Hemophilia Council for having me here today. I'm so glad that you all are still moving forward with virtual advocacy. As Terry mentioned, previously worked for an advocacy organization, so I know how exciting and pivotal advocacy days can be for organizations and for members and participants, and especially folks who are new to the space that for the first time doing that. It can be really empowering, a really learning experience. And while things are a little bit different this year, I'm glad that you all were still finding ways to move this forward. I know a lot of organizations are doing that, so I really commend you for being able to kind of pull this together and still have it move forward in one shape or another. As Terry mentioned, I'm one of the consultants for the Senate Health Committee, and what that means is that when members, both senators and assembly members, author bills, they're referred to committees where they're given an analysis and then voted on by the committee. And so my role and the role of my colleagues in the Senate Health Committee is to provide that analysis where we take a deep dive into that legislation, talk to the author, really understand what it is that they're trying to do, maybe sort of pinpoint areas where the bill isn't doing quite what they think they're doing, and then listen to and help to resolve issues that might come up. Opponents or people who have concerns about the legislation, supporters who are trying to advance a particular policy goal, really resolve those issues and provide a recommendation to our chair and our members on the committee on what we feel is the best path forward to achieve the policy goals or to resolve some of the policy conflicts that might come up. And so that's our role. And so one of the key things I want to flag for you all as you're kind of doing these conversations is really know who you're talking to, right? If you're talking to me as the consultant of the committee who has a particular issue area expertise, it may not make sense to go through all of the sort of basic details of the particular issue. You might want to ask the person, hey, what is your familiarity with this area of law or this particular issue? And that will help you to frame your conversation on how to communicate with folks. I think the most important thing as you're moving forward with your advocacy conversations, of course, is to identify the particular issue you're working on, connect it to your personal story or that of your family member or colleagues or friends, whoever it is that is impacted by this particular situation, and then link that to the policy proposal that you're hoping to advance, right? Introducing the issue, talking about how it personally affects you or your loved ones or those close to you, and then linking it to the particular policy proposals that you're talking about. And I think that's really the key basics of that. Obviously, all of us in the Capitol are doing these type of meetings in one way or the other. And so, we're doing it virtually, and sometimes it's over Zoom and sometimes it's over phone call. So I think it's even more important now to be really clear if you've got a group going in, to be clear about who each role is in making those conversations, who's going to be the one kicking off the conversation, who's going to be bringing in XYZ issue, who's going to be telling this story, and who's going to come in with the close. And then of course having a facilitator in that conversation. When we're in the Capitol, one of the things that's always important to us is to have a nice flow to the meeting. It's always kind of difficult when you as a staff are sitting there and folks are kind of staring at you and you're staring back and someone needs to talk first, right? It's your meeting, right? You've asked for the time with the legislator, you've asked for the time with the staffer, and so know what it is you're doing, know it is what you're asking for, and have a good flow and facilitate that conversation. And it's always important to read the body language of the folks in the room. If they're getting bored on a particular thing, maybe kind of check in with them. Is this maybe something you already know about? I can move on to something else. Obviously, most of the time, folks are very attentive, but just things to look out for when you're having those meetings with staff. And I think finally, is to know, and I think your leaders here, Terry and Lynn, will be very great at helping prepare you for this, but knowing where the policy issue that you're talking about, where is that in the process legislatively? Is it in a piece of legislation that has stalled for the year? And so you're really just coming in to say, hey, we know this didn't move this year, but this is still a really important issue, and we really still want to make sure that you understand why we're pursuing it. Or is it something actively being voted on? Hey, this is coming to you as the member who sits on this committee in the next couple of weeks. So we just wanted to make sure that you knew this was our position, something like that. Or, are they just going to be seeing it on the floor and that's the only chance they're going to see it? Or is it a budget issue where they're really not going to have a chance as a member that's just going to be voting on, that they're not really going to have a particular ability to mold the conversation, and you're just trying to tell them, hey, this is where that issue is. So, being clear not only what the ask is, but what is the ask in relation to who that member or that staff member as boss is going to be voting on that issue. And I think that those are the key things to think about as you guys are going through your virtual advocacy day. I'm happy to take any questions or talk about my experience as an Assembly Fellow. Folks are interested in figuring out how to work in the legislature. So I'll just stop there and see if folks have any questions.
Yeah, that's perfect. So thank you, Kimberly, for those tips. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask?
Hi, this is Mike Bradley. I'm current president of the board for the Hemophilia Council. Can you talk about follow-up? I've done federal lobbying where we use Twitter. What's the best way for us to follow up with you or other legislators during the day tomorrow?
Yeah, if you're talking to staff, you're probably doing virtual meetings, and you've probably set up meetings with them via email. So I think following up with them via email is probably the best way to do it. I did neglect to talk about that in my initial presentation, but yeah, having a follow-up, even if your meeting is just about education on a particular issue and there's not a particular ask, just following up and sending a thank you note. Obviously, sending a physical thank you note is a little more difficult, right? Because we're not in our offices very often, so we may not get that note for a couple of weeks until we get back in the office to check on our mail and things like that. But a follow-up email is usually very helpful.
Perfect. I also saw a question that popped up in the chat. Opportunities for internships in government for high school students, and particularly right now with COVID-19, how is that impacting internships?
So we have current intern and fellows who were already in place who are on these year-long programs, and I think because they've had that year-long commitment, they're just working virtually just like everybody else. But those are paid position. In terms of internships, I don't think any offices are doing that at that point. This is, usually interns who are more entry level, like high school students. Your main task is to be the person who grabs the mail, who grabs the phone, and then to work on projects with leg aides in the office, supporting them in more entry-level legislative issues to kind of get your feet wet. That obviously is a little more difficult during this time. So I'm not sure as to what they're doing right now with internships, right? There's no phones or doors to answer at this point, unfortunately, yeah.
So maybe with that, I would say typically there are plenty of opportunities for high school students even, but in a normal year, but that might be something for them to check back when things start opening up a little bit more and offices are able to function a little bit more normally. Right. Would be kind of my thought from my Capitol experience anyways. Yeah. And then another comment that came through the chat was asking, they had read about the budget deal that was, has just been negotiated, that safety net health programs are being protected during the budget crisis currently. And they were asking about that applying to GHPP and CCS. We're actually going to talk about that a little bit more later in the presentation because that's one of our talking points for tomorrow. GHPP and CCS are being are our main programs that we fight for, and they are currently protected in the budget. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And I know your boss at Senate Health Committee has been a big supporter of our Senator Pan in helping to keep those programs protected and safe for the community. So we appreciate his support on that. Yeah. Excellent. Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate that insight, and we are looking forward. So hopefully this puts folks' minds at ease a little bit as they prepare for their meetings tomorrow, knowing that most likely the folks that they'll be across the screen from are going to be just as friendly as Kimberly and interested to hear what they have to say. So we really appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and good luck tomorrow.
Thank you,
Kimberly.
Right, see you guys later.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope that this was helpful as you prepare for tomorrow's meetings. We hope that those of you who were not able to participate in the meetings will join us in advocating on your social media channels or via email tomorrow. And if you have any questions whatsoever that we didn't get to, my email is at the bottom of the screen. It's lkinst, K-I-N-S-T, at hemophiliaca.org. Please feel free to reach out to me and we'll be happy to direct you in the right direction. So thank you so much, and we look forward to a great advocacy day tomorrow. Talk to you soon.